You are listening to the What a Word podcast, an interview-style podcast where guests bring their unique experiences and insight on culture, life's challenges, and faith. Each episode is seasoned with words which will inspire and encourage. Now here is your host, Ryan Sharp.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the What a Word podcast. As many of you know, I've taken a little break, but it's such a joy to be back in this space. The feedback I got from last week's episode is tremendous. The text, the sharing, the WhatsApp messages, just your response has confirmed for me that in this space, people still want to hear words of inspiration and encouragement. And as you know, my guests, they come from all walks of life, but everyone has a story. And if there is some encouragement I could give to anyone listening or viewing, is that you're not alone. Sometimes we feel that our experiences isolate us and that whatever we're going through, nobody else understands. But if I could encourage you in this moment, I want you to know that you're not alone. And while you're on this journey, there are people who are rooting for you to get through it. And what I enjoy most is when individuals, having come from a storm or gone through a storm, come back to share. And I don't believe today will be any different. I have a family as a guest today. My guest, Dr. Rashida Vassell, is no stranger to the podcast. In fact, in season 1, she was one of the earlier guests. And at that time, we were just recording audio. But since I've gone on to YouTube and a lot has happened in her life, I wanted to get her back, and she was gracious enough, notwithstanding her busy schedule, to join us on the podcast again. Dr. Rashida Vassell graduated from SUNY Downstate College of Medicine. She completed general surgery training at the University of Vermont Medical Center, where she served as chief resident in her final year. During her research year at UVM, she obtained graduate certification in Clinical and Translational Science. She's double board certified in Wound and Hyperbaric Medicine and Anti-Aging Medicine. There's more, and it's in the notes. Very accomplished, very impactful work. But please join me without saying anything further. I want you to join me in welcoming again my guest, Dr. Rashida Vassell, to the What a Word podcast. Welcome, my friend.
Hi, cousin. How are you?
Listen, I am so honored. There's so much that has happened since we last spoke, and I didn't know when this would happen, but I'm glad that in this season we have the opportunity to share. I was watching the debate just last night, just the whole discourse about immigrants and our contributions or the effects of our presence, and you sit there sometimes and you feel someone needs to say it. And I think the vice president did a good job of humanizing immigrants yesterday, notwithstanding some of the political discourse.
Right.
And, with that said, I wanted to get into your journey, some of which you've stated previously. But I think people need to know that you and I were both born in the Jamaica West Indies. Could you tell us about where you were born and the kind of area that you were born in?
Yes. Just first, thank you so much for having me again. Our first conversation, really, I'd say not only was it salient for you, but also for me, because it did also help catapult my career also into just really public speaking. So thank you very much for that invitation. And so when you asked if I would be a guest again, well, yes. For one, I don't want my cousin coming at me for saying no. And this is just always a pleasure. So thank you so much for having me. Yeah. And so born in Kingston, Jamaica, Jubilee Hospital, as it used to be called. I think it's now Kingston Public Hospital. And grew up in the early years in Portmore, but before that it was Bay Farm Villa. And so spent, like, I remember Hurricane Gilbert, we were living in Villa. So very, very strong memories of my childhood in Jamaica before moving here at the age of 9.
Jeez. And, for most of us, Jamaica represents, like our early childhood, like that's our experience.
Yeah.
But I'm wondering if at that time someone made the decision for you that coming to America would offer you more opportunities.
Yeah. And that person or those persons were my parents. So my mom, and I always think about this now that I am a mom, and my oldest daughter is about the same age that I was when I came here to the state. And her making that very difficult decision to send me to live with my dad. So the other decision maker in this whole process to bring me here to the States with the potential for opportunities that I wouldn't have ordinarily have gotten in Jamaica.
Wow. At 9, did you have medicine on your bucket list of professions?
I did. So I'm one of those individuals. So medicine kind of stemmed from going to my pediatrician, even in Jamaica, but seeing there was something with my interactions with my pediatricians, just being of service, and having someone who seems to have a bit of a different life than I did, that just kind of stood out as, maybe this is something I wanted to do. So from I was a little girl, there was a visit. I tell the story all the time. Daddy came out to Jamaica to visit me. I'm assuming probably a summer, and we're sitting on the veranda, and he asked me what I wanted to be when I grew up. And this was younger than when I was 9. And my answer was, and it still is and always has been, well, I'm gonna become a doctor.
Yes.
And he said, well, if that's what you want, that's what we're gonna do. And that has been like our single-minded focus from that moment into my formative years in the Bronx, and then high school and beyond. It was becoming a physician.
That's powerful. And you know what I think is understated is that you could have, with that same desire, accomplished the same goals maybe in Jamaica, because we know people who've done it, right?
Yeah.
But I think it says something about the immigration experience that your dad making his own sacrifice, because I'm sure, like many parents, he came to the States and had to struggle, etc. But he envisioned a better life for you, and he recognized that perhaps there were more opportunities available in the U.S. for his daughter.
Right.
And I think that's understated in the whole discourse about why immigrants leave.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's powerful. And, I'm segueing, but what do you make of all of it with a potential or vice president now being a woman of color, potential presidential candidate, and then the whole rhetoric about what immigrants offer and what they don't offer to the United States of America?
Yeah.
How do you, in this environment, knowing what you know about your own experience, how has the rhetoric been for your ears?
Yeah, it's difficult because that a lot of that, where people are saying things to be inflammatory, it's oftentimes from a place of inexperience, right? So oftentimes there are no interactions with an immigrant family who are hardworking. They, by and far, want just the same thing most families want, and that is for their children to be safe, and successful. And they just really want to work hard in order to attain that. And so I find that lots of people who kind of have a negative view of immigrants, oftentimes they're not even exposed or have experience with immigrant stories. And so there is that part that if only you could just interact or learn, you probably wouldn't feel this way, right? And so
Man, just for brevity, some, humor's sake, I had some misconceptions about America before I came here. I came
right.
here probably at about 14. But
Okay.
as a child, I honestly thought that snow tasted like vanilla ice
Uh,
cream. And I was also unprepared for a school environment that didn't start off with devotion. So my first day at Mount Vernon High School in
yes.
1980s, I was looking around for the auditorium. I ran there
Yes.
before I even went to any classes
Uh-huh.
because I
Uh-huh.
was totally unprepared for what
Right.
life. What was
Right.
your experience as a
Yeah, so
early
it's so
immigrant?
funny. I have an identical story, like
Yeah.
the first week of school in America. And we generally when we're dressed or if I remember I think maybe the principal visited the classroom or maybe I was called on.
Hmm.
And what do? We're in Jamaica. We stand up, right? And I just remember standing up to, either answer a question or the teacher addressed me, and
Hmm.
that's what we did. And I just remember the class like snickering at that very, and I'm like, wait, this is not what everyone does because that's what
Hmm.
we do. We know it as
Sure.
a sign of respect.
Sure.
And that stands out in my mind when I think about my first
Mm.
American experience.
Wow.
Yeah.
And what I like about your hobbies, and it's notable that you mentioned it also in your bio, the love for travel. And
Mm-hmm.
I just from observing your social media content, you visited a couple of the continents, or
Mm-hmm.
at least you
Yeah.
visited
Yeah.
you yeah, the continent of
Yeah.
Africa. Yes. How
Yes.
was that experience? Because I often hear that when one touches the ground, there is a like a welcoming and energy that says welcome home. Did you
Yes,
experience that as
yes,
well?
yes. It felt like a pilgrimage.
Wow. Where did you
Like,
go?
so went to Ghana, stayed in the city of Accra,
Oh, nice.
visited, we went out to the coast to visit some of the castles.
Wow.
And it just life-changing,
Mm-hmm.
life-changing experience. From the moment we landed, I mean, just the welcome. They welcome you and they call you and it's genuine when they're
Mm.
referring to you as brother or sister.
Wow. Wow.
And I think what was unique with the Ghanaian experience is that there is a whole movement with trying to welcome back people who've, lost touch with their
Wow.
motherland. And
Jeez.
so that's ingrained in like everyday life. And
Mm-hmm.
you just felt that, like you felt a strong sense of belonging. The other thing that stood out with Ghana is that, we kind of have an inkling, a lot of our Jamaican heritage, the words that
Sure.
we use, we know a lot of our national heroes were actually Ghanaian.
Mm-hmm.
And so there is like whole monuments on Nanny the Maroon.
Wow.
Jamaican flags were everywhere in
I never knew
Ghana.
that. Yeah.
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
there baked the hardo bread that we know as hardo bread. It looks identical to the bread that they make in Ghana. And so you feel
Mm-hmm.
like, wow, okay, so now this even makes it my Jamaican heritage. It goes even further than Jamaica. You realize that it goes back to the continental
Mm-hmm.
Africa. And so it was incredible.
Wow.
The last thing that I really, really, really want to point out with that experience, though, is that the visit to the castles, and we always think about the way I have reframed it is that realizing that we are the descendants of people who've survived the most horrific thing that could happen to us. You survive the people, so we're not necessarily coming from a point of like, failure. These people survived the most horrific, and we are descendants of survivors. And so that resonates so much with me. Love it.
So you are having this awakening on the ground with hobby. Talk about a history lesson and putting things in its context. That couldn't have been, I mean, I'm sure while there was some joy and exhilaration, there must have been moments of sadness.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Seeing where our ancestors took their last bath before the long walk to the slave castles. We actually, touched that running water. It definitely is one of those very sacred experiences. It's so spiritual. It's impossible not to be changed. And so this was an adult trip. So we went with, our spouses, and there's definitely, without a doubt, a plan to, as soon as our children are old enough to go back, for them to have that experience.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's powerful, man.
Yeah.
Sobering, powerful, inspiring, because I'm thinking my family needs to make, and what you said about language, I've heard that a lot, that the Jamaican dialect patois has so much in common with.
So much ties.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's incredible.
Wow. So I spoke indirectly about the parents making the sacrifice for you to come here. You know what your dad may have experienced as an immigrant, some of the hardships. You no doubt are now inspiring your own daughters to see the world through perhaps another lens. Now, mommy is I mentioned this to you offline, a serial entrepreneur, and now dealing with the story that the skin tells us. And I didn't know before I looked into what you're doing now, that the skin told so many stories. But before getting to that, how did you make that pivot? Because I identified what you were doing prior.
Right.
And how did you make that shift? Why the shift? Why the pivot?
Yes. This is one of those things where as you grow, it's hard not to have changes or metamorphosis, right? As you grow. If you are in the same place you were in a year ago, 2 years ago, you've not grown, right? Whether it's emotionally, mentally, financially, there's many different forms of growth. So I just want to be very specific about that. But part of evolving or even becoming your better self is to try different things. Not all of them are going to be successful, but taking that opportunity, that risk, because that risk, that is really how you learn, how you grow. And I've never been shy about doing that. The first part of that growth was coming from Jamaica to the United States and thriving. So this is something that I've been used to doing. And it was right on the cusp of COVID happening, where I had just managed to find an opportunity to breathe, as I just completed cancer treatment. Right. So went through major surgeries and chemotherapy, radiation. That just happened. And I was ready to actually go back into clinical medicine, working at the hospital. But something still was not in alignment. It still felt like difficult. And COVID happened in that same instant. And then realizing that perhaps I am a little bit more dispensable to, the corporate medicine,
Sure.
to patients, and just kind of really getting that eye-opening experience that no matter, I didn't feel like I was in control of my destiny.
Mercy.
And so wanting to just finally take that opportunity, that leap of faith, to be able to figure out how I could deliver medicine in a way that I would want medicine delivered to me, because I was just a patient, right? I just went through this whole experience going through treatment as a patient, and there are definitely things that I'm forever grateful for while receiving care. But there are other things that I really, truly felt that could have been done differently.
Wow,
And
I want to
so,
unpack that. I want to
yeah,
unpack that, Rashida,
yeah,
because so here's what I'll say first. You are very transparent, have been very transparent with, and you mentioned it just now, your
yeah,
cancer diagnosis.
yes,
And we were praying your healing and
yes,
that you would get the care that you needed.
right,
And I think for our listeners here, I think it's notable that you are able to and willing to address one, the proactive way you approached your own care,
right,
some of the benefits you saw to the healthcare system, but
right,
also
right,
some of the inadequacies.
yeah,
And I think the point you're making now is that managed to drive you in the direction it drove you in. Unpack that for me now.
yeah,
The person who is listening who may have, maybe it's not a cancer diagnosis, but maybe averse to going to the doctor for healthcare checks. Please encapsulate for me why your testimony about your own journey means so much to you.
So first and foremost, I'm here today literally because it was an early diagnosis.
Mm,
And who knows where, if I did not listen to that little nagging thing in the back of my mind. So, just finished nursing my youngest child and find a lump that should not be there. And so I could have definitely dismissed it as it was nothing, but I couldn't let it go. There was just this nagging feeling in my head. And I actually had just visited my primary for a well checkup and got a clean bill of health a few weeks prior. And no risk factors, no family history, none of that, thought I was doing all the right things. But this nagging feeling that something just wasn't right. And so, one of the first things that I'm very thankful for is that my primary care physician was someone that looked like me, that believed, because she could have dismissed it and said it's nothing. And that would have actually been enough for me in my mind. But she didn't dismiss it. And she said, well, if it's something that's bothering you, let's just check it out. So that was the first thing that I'm very thankful for. Someone that really believed
yeah,
that
yeah.
something was off.
You were heard. You were heard.
Yes,
Yeah,
someone who heard me.
yeah.
The other thing that I am very grateful for is that I do not discount the fact that because I worked in a system, I was able actually to get to access care relatively quickly. And so it was maybe a space of a week between when I felt like something was off, I contacted my primary, till I got a diagnosis. And that space of time, that the lack of not delaying is really why I'm here today. And so it's so important. I cannot impress enough on our listeners, our people, is that what makes the difference is being proactive and not delaying. Yeah. And I know I'm saying that really from a position of privilege, because there's lots of people who do not have access to healthcare, don't know where to go, or the wait list to get into an appointment is beyond. And so I acknowledge that those are from really strong inadequacy in the system, but that those are the things that, if it is working properly, and if you are in charge of your own health, will make a difference ultimately between a good outcome and maybe not a good outcome.
Yeah, and we pray for that's the other part of the immigration story. If you're undocumented, you're talking a clinic as opposed to sometimes a primary care. And then being discounted, unheard, disregarded.
Or if there's a language barrier, right? A lot of times there's definitely, there are people who are simply just speaking another language and they're ruled as having altered mental status. So that happens, and they're not altered. They're just speaking a language you don't understand. So imagine all these barriers to accessing good quality care.
Jeez. And that led you to where you are now.
Yeah. And so for me, it was small things, just wanting to be in a space that felt comfortable, where I had time. A lot of the traditional healthcare models, it's really about volume. So seeing patients as quickly as possible. And so you're not getting the opportunity to really get to know the provider that's taking care of you. And those little things make a difference. And so I'm able to do that in private practice, is to really sit and talk at length with my patients. And you're learning things about them that really could impact their clinical outcome that I wouldn't otherwise know.
Wow. Yeah. I'm on a chat with a bunch of brothers around my age, and it's interesting to see how we talk about the whole colonoscopy experience and prostate check. There's this discomfort, and to a man, we all will admit that we don't look forward to those checkups, but we also recognize that, like you said, early detection helps. I'm wondering if you would be able to say something to the listener or viewer, whether it be male or female, about, and I think you qualified it, that some people don't have the access.
Right.
It's really a blessing when you have good health insurance. Right. I'd like you to say something, though, to the listener and the viewer who need some encouragement to do those annual checks, but is averse to hearing from the doctor, would rather drink some bush tea or and I'm not discounting the herbal remedies.
Yes.
But I know some of us, I know my people, and we need encouragement to go and see our primary care.
Yeah. And we're not discounting the herbal remedies, right? It actually, I love the complementary approach, meaning let's do a little bit of the herbal remedies, but quite honestly, healthcare is here for a reason. And the reason why our lifespan now is different than what it was a century ago is because of modern medicine. And so let's use the tools, the resources that we have available to us. It's scary. And I think for us, it's medicine or interacting with the healthcare, like just industry in general, is scary to us, is because we hear of the horror stories. But I can tell you, as not a patient, but as a physician, a lot of times those horror stories of poor outcomes is because we are seeing it when it's too late, when there's not much to do, right? We're hearing, Auntie was fine one day, and then she got this diagnosis and she's dead in 3 months. Well, yeah, the diagnosis might have been a late diagnosis. So that's why when it's so late, we don't have as many tools to make an impact on someone's life versus if Auntie showed up 3 years earlier, found this thing that was growing that would have been caught early. That's where the difference happens for medical care. And so that's why it's so important to get preventative care. And then beyond that, though, a lot of it that we got to think about, we got to talk about it, Ryan, is, our own individual choices, lifestyle. Are we smoking? Are we drinking? Are we eating the fatty foods? Carb heavy? Lots of it are things that are changes that we can make as individuals that will help also extend our longevity.
Wow. Yeah. Agreed. And it sounds to me like you would also suggest that if you go and see your doctor, your primary care physician, even if you get a good reading, clean bill of health, and something doesn't feel right, part of your own advocacy may mean going back and getting a follow-up appointment. If something feels off.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that's what happened in your situation.
That's exactly what I did. Yeah. I went to the primary for my annual physical. All was fine by all accounts. And a couple weeks later, found this lump in my breast, and I sent her an email like, hey, this is probably nothing.
But I just want to be sure.
Yeah. And she said, let's take a look at it. And nothing turned into something.
Jeez. Man, I'm glad you are here. I'm glad you experienced the healing. And, for my listeners and viewers who are going through it, our prayers are with you. And I'm praying wherever you're getting serviced, that you're getting the attention you need, the compassion you need, and they're hearing your voice when you express that.
Amen.
You don't feel good or something feels off.
Yeah.
Being a Black-owned business extends so much further than making great products. It's about representing the 8 out of 10 Black businesses that failed within the first 18 months of launch. It's about giving hope to the 4% of startups that are founded by Black women. It's about using our influence to affect change in the communities that look like us, and proving to the next generation that no matter the color of your skin, nothing is impossible.
I want to talk to you about pivoting, because when you and I last spoke, doing surgery, great hospital, great benefits, great income, steady work. You decided to pivot, and we heard a backstory about why. Talk to us about some of the challenges of being an entrepreneur, and then say a little bit about your current organization, business, software?
Man, where do I start? Really? Oh my goodness. It is not for the weak. Okay. And I blame no one for being gainfully employed. Okay. You get
Mhm.
that W-2.
Yes, 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 yes.
There's definitely a certain level of comfort that
Mhm.
comes with knowing if you show up to work, you're
Mhm.
going to get paid. I mean, there's a
Yes.
lot associated with that, where maybe you feel like you're not in as much control of your destiny, but
Mhm.
there's certainly a level of comfort that comes with that. For me, it was needing to feel like I had it. Just getting a check was just not enough. There was still this level of dissatisfaction within me, feeling like there was more that I can do, more that I can offer. And then having these experiences up until that point in time really informed my decision to
Mhm.
make a shift.
Mhm.
What I'm learning though is that control in your destiny also comes with a lot of uncertainty. And it's the uncertainty that can be really off-putting if you're not really certain with where your direction is, what your calling is, knowing that even though you don't have evidence in front of you of your success, you still have this deep sense and desire in knowing that it's there. You just
Yeah.
can't see it. You just can't see it.
Mhm.
I can't see it.
Mhm.
I don't have any evidence of that right now, but there's something that's telling me that there's something beyond. And I've just never been one to not look beyond as to what is there. Um, so that's really where I am. I will say that it's incredibly difficult, especially when you have a team of people who are dependent on you also. That changes a lot. Your goals and your desires for succeeding absolutely are different when you realize that you have people who are also dependent on your success.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
It sounds almost like the farmer who plants and, is waiting for the harvest, and there's no telltale signs. You nourish the crop, you do
And
everything, and you're
yes.
waiting, but, when and how it comes is sometimes hard to predict.
Yes, yes. And I really appreciate you making that analogy because I've not thought about it like that, but that's exactly what it is. We're
Wow.
planting the seed,
Mm-hmm.
and there's lots of external forces that can affect the reap or the crop, right?
Yes.
And environment, some act of God or Watagon or
Mm-hmm.
something. It's not a good year for sunshine.
Sure.
But yeah, there's still that hope that that seed is going to thrive. And that's exactly what Sofala is.
Awesome. So I described it generally as the skin telling a story.
Yeah.
Um, Connected though to wound and hyperbaric medicine.
Yeah. Yeah. So my background as a general surgeon, we would wound skin on purpose. Like we're cutting into skin to affect a change. Whether it's someone with appendicitis that you're taking care of. And then moving beyond that, there are patients who are afflicted with either chronic wounds, so diabetic,
Mm,
ulcers is something that come to mind, venous stasis ulcers, or even traumatic wounds, so burns. And so transitioned into that focus for a good while. But I'm then still taking care of wounded skin, taking care of pathologies for skin. Um, Now the transition is really helping people really optimize what their skin looks like in otherwise healthy patients. The difference now, though, is really trying to hone in on realizing that how your skin looks on the outside is really affected by what's going on with your body on the inside, both physiologically as well as psychologically. There are definitely people who have like stress response and their skin breaks out. So understanding that really deep connection with how you are processing foods, what you're intaking is going to affect how your skin is managed. Whether or not you protect doing things like sun protection affects how your skin looks. And so just getting back to the basics.
Wow. And does your work now connect to your past? Because for me, I remember the teenage years, man. I mean, the products then, Clearasil, I don't even know if they still exist, but my mother was trying everything because the
Everything.
pimples. I mean,
Yeah.
and like you said, this is your
Yeah.
outside, so
Yeah.
everybody knows what's happening.
Yes.
Did
Yes.
did this somehow connect to imaging and
Oh,
imagery
yeah.
and
Yeah.
self,
Yeah. Yeah.
talk
So
about what it
then go back.
holistically, what it's, yeah.
Yeah. So it didn't go back to my childhood or teenage years. It actually started with me going through cancer treatment. And losing my hair and your skin feels a little ashen, or the weight gain that comes with treatment, or with radiation, there's radiation burns that happen with the skin. So that's really where I honed in onto, wait a minute, there is something strongly associated with how I feel is really associated with how I'm looking, like what I'm looking at in the mirror. And having that ability it really helped me feel whole, trying to get all those pieces that felt like they were broken or off or needed healing and attention, really helped get me back to feeling whole as a woman, as a human being.
I think it's so understated, and it wasn't until you said what you just said, it really occurred to me. We don't seem to have enough for people whose bodies are changing because they're getting treatment.
Yeah.
Because I'm a member of a church and I know so many people who are, going through radiation treatment. And like you mentioned, for many women, the hair is an important part of image.
It is.
And now they have to wear wigs or,
Yeah.
but I never really considered that as a part of the challenge of, treatment.
Yes. I didn't either.
Mm-hmm.
I did not either. It wasn't until I went through it myself.
Wow.
And really understanding. And, there was a good chance that if I really didn't take the time to reset, I might not have even made that association.
Yeah.
It was definitely feeling like the universe, God really was like, you need a hard stop. You need a pause. You need to figure this out to understand that there's a lot more connected, and understand that I have to look inward in order to really feel like I'm thriving and I'm shining externally.
Well, I want to go back to the root planting analogy that we used, because I don't know if you imagine that when you started out, in terms of some of the testimonials, in terms of impact and what it's done for people who receive the treatment. Because again, image is so important. And I've watched, and I'm going to put in the notes ways people can connect to your website and see some of the work that you do. What have you heard from some of your patients about what the treatment, the care that by all indications is very holistic, has done for them personally?
Yeah. Yeah. I've had patients sit and go, wow, I didn't really realize I was coming into a therapy session today. Because it just makes a difference with
Mhm.
being able to discuss life. Like
Mhm.
nothing happens in a silo. Your
Sure.
body certainly is not that.
Mhm. Mhm.
And your experiences, the way you express yourself physically is a combination of a whole lot that's happening. Some
Sure.
of the things you have control over and some you have no control over.
Mhm.
And so being able to really just talk about some changes about even having conversations about sunscreen has been life changing to some of my patients,
Yeah.
or conversations about like tan in beds, having conversations about certain foods that we eat. It's been
Mhm.
so gratifying
Mhm.
being able to just get back to the basics and to really have our patients feel like that they're not necessarily crazy for thinking that something might be off.
Wow.
Yeah.
So I know you address the skin as far as wounds, burns, radiation treatment, etc. But I also noticed that massages are also included.
Uh-huh.
Why
Yeah.
the extension to massages as
Yeah,
opposed
it's really just trying
to
to lower that cortisol, just really
yeah.
trying to relax, just trying
Mm-hmm.
to affect stress,
Mm-hmm.
and to understand that there's more to healing than Western medicine.
Sure, sure.
Meditation is important.
Mm-hmm.
Exercise, getting massages,
Mm-hmm.
really healing holistically takes
Mm-hmm.
more than taking a medication.
Wow.
Healing holistically is more than putting on something on your skin.
Powerful.
It's it's
Powerful.
it's everything. Yeah.
I've heard people say this person seems to be aging backwards. And I think you've
Mm,
identified that a healthy lifestyle, just having healthy skin, does tremendous. There's a tremendous value. Um, wow, to all of that. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Oh man, so we've almost come full circle, and I mentioned the name of your organization, your company,
Yes.
your
Mhm.
endeavor. Tell us about
The
what's in a
name.
name. What's in a name? Yes.
Yes, right. So Safala is the amalgamation.
Mm-hmm.
That's a fancy word that I got from my attorney.
Mm-hmm.
But it's the combination. I didn't know, right? Right? You know that, right? Attorney speak. So it's a combination of my daughter's middle name, Sophia, which is
Mm-hmm.
also my middle name,
Mm-hmm.
and Nala. And
Okay.
that came about because really went through every iteration of trying to name the practice,
Sure.
and none of it was unique. It was all taken.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just like, well, okay, let's see what this looks like. And it was one of those middle of the night
Mm-hmm.
kind of discussions and decisions. And so the combination of
Mm-hmm.
putting my girls' names together is how we got Safala.
Wow. And almost finally, I want to take you back to your conversation with your dad on the veranda when he asked you what it is you want to do, and you said, I want to become a doctor. And
Mm-hmm.
then he just, with all the resources he had, put them your way.
Yeah.
You put in the work. Wasn't
Mm-hmm.
without challenges, but
Oh
by
no.
God's grace, you did it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, And just in terms of your own story about naming your company after your daughters, I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering what you could say to those of us who are risk averse
Mm-hmm.
about doing things with our children in mind.
Yeah. Here's what I would say. Um, this was one of those conversations having with my husband, and it just kind of came out where the realization that even with everything that we're building right now with Safala, a lot of it may not be realized until it's our children or grandchildren. who will see that. So that takes a lot of really forward thinking to do this kind of undertaking.
Jeez.
But I also know, and my father always used to say this, like 10 years is going past seeing where, right? 10 years from now, you can't either be a doctor or not. But 10 years
It's
are going
gonna
past seeing
pass.
where, right? So where do I want to be? Where can I even imagine? And then not only my imagination, I'm not really trying to make it seem like this is something that I've, pulled from the back of my head. I really feel like this is divine. And so I am following the direction of
Sure.
really stepping into faith, not seeing, but also trusting.
Wow.
And,
Powerful.
gotta do it. But it also, it is. I've definitely been around even my team who, there are people who will see the vision and see that grand vision, but the day to day, right? The failures, the fall 10 times, get up 11 times. Not everybody wants to do that or can do that. But that's what needs to be done to get there. We can't expect grand. It just doesn't happen that way. And
Yeah.
I've
Yeah.
been through enough to realize that you really have to like churn out. You have to feel that pressure. You gotta go through the hard stuff to grow.
Sure. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
how we learn, right? Even learning new things in med school or learning to be a surgeon, it was like the most painful thing my brain's ever done. But you kind of go through this really awkward pull, and then you're on the other side of it and you realize like, wow, I can do this.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you don't get to that side until you really go through the really, really tough. And I'm in the middle of that again with
Powerful.
Safala. But
Wow.
I've been through, worse.
Powerful testimony, man. I want to take this opportunity while we close to thank all the parents, or whether it was single parent, who sacrificed so that their children could have a better life. And I know America hasn't been kind to everyone. Not everyone has a good story coming out,
Right.
but certainly the sacrifice needs to be commended. I fought with my mother about the concrete jungle not having adequate space to play, the cold, the kids at school who tease you because you're not wearing the name brand.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, man, she made a conscious decision that she was going to suck salt, as they say, so that I could have a better life.
Right.
And no doubt, Rashida, you have some people I'm sure you want to thank as well. We mentioned them in passing, but if you could, while we close,
Right.
speak about the contributions of those who paved the way for
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. And again, it's my parents.
Yeah.
They've practiced the same thing that I'm doing now, right? That faith. They had no idea what my life would look like 40 years from now, but they had a faith or a trust that it would be ultimately or hopefully different than what present day was telling them.
Yeah.
And that's not easy to do. Again, my mom making that decision to send me to live with my dad, and then my dad making that decision to really pour into me day in and day out. I mean, I can tell you about nights at the dinner table where tears are streaming down my face because I just did not want to do another math problem. And he sat with me through that, like worked with me through that, summer programs when I could be doing anything else, but I am at a college campus doing math and science. I mean, this is like really, you got to get through, but it's such an important lesson. It's such an important lesson.
Sure.
And so, I thank them every day for
Wow.
for that.
Powerful, man. Dr. Vassell, thank you so much for joining me on a busy time and busy season for yourself. But listen, I think you have connected the dots for someone who is listening and viewing today. And I'm hoping if you're listening and you're in that space where, you planted and you're not seeing the fruits yet, that you'll continue to hold on. Please don't give up on
Please
yourself.
don't. Yeah.
Don't give up on your dreams and don't give up on your faith. Dr. Vassell, thank you so much again for being a guest on the What a Word podcast. I don't know if you're opposed to people following your journey, but I will post it in the notes, and certainly you can
No,
connect with
listen,
her.
please. No, yes, follow me on IG.
Right.
Rashida Vassell MD. There's Safala Medical on IG, Facebook, wherever you can find me. Absolutely, follow. The support, near or far, is always, always, always appreciated.
Sis, blessings. I commend you on your journey and I wish you all the best, and we're
Bye.
rooting for you. Blessings,
Yes,
and we'll keep in touch.
always.